All right, so we're done with the 5 foundations. Now, I have to say, since Haidt published his original book, he's been continuing to work, and eventually he came up with foundation number 6. This helped him explain libertarians a little better, but also liberals and conservatives. And he said, really, there's this emphasis on protecting liberty against oppression, and you can see this on both the left and the right. On the left, I'll start on the right. On the right, think of the "Don't tread on me" flag. The idea that think about who the person treading would be, right? It would be the government stepping on you and therefore saying we're going to fight back. But again, the government is the kind of tool of oppression. You can sometimes see that on the left, though often the oppressor who's taking away people's liberty is often like a kind of capitalist oppressor here, right? Think of this example of the sweatshop owner saying just do it to exploit child labor, right? And taking away their liberty to have a normal childhood, I suppose. And, by the way, I'll also point out this is, probably represented as an out group, right, as opposed to the in group. This is not part of the community, but nevertheless, we use the CARE Foundation about them just to connect to other moral foundations. But regardless, we can see the same thing about, opposing oppression, protecting the freedom of particular people. By the way, to be clear, for people on the left, it can be the government who's the oppressor, and that's often true, especially when it involves like racial minorities or something like that. And you can think about, we showed the abolish ICE earlier, and once again here we have Black Lives Matter, which is a great example of the idea of government as oppressor, taking away literally not just the liberty, I guess the lives of Black people, right? So, all right, we have all of these different things that Haidt brings up. Now you may be thinking this, by the way, which is, all right, he says this and he like postulates that these exist, but what evidence does he have? And here is ultimately, the way he builds his argument. He says, all right, I've, identified these originally 5 different foundations. Well, how could I test it? How could I say that certain people hold certain foundations more strongly than others? And then based on that, can I see a relationship between particular foundations and particular political beliefs? That is, are there certain political beliefs that are associated more with some of these foundations than others? And the way he did this originally was he created these surveys that he administered along with a team of researchers to thousands of people, asking ostensibly apolitical questions. Right? You are asked whether you agree or strongly agree or disagree or strongly disagree with a series of things. And so, for example, you might get asked a care harm question like, compassion for those suffering is the most crucial virtue. Strongly agree, strongly disagree, and so forth. You might be asked, I think it's morally wrong that rich children inherit a lot of money while poor children inherit nothing. Do you agree with that or not? People should be loyal to family members, even if they've done something wrong. If I were a soldier and disagreed with my commanding officer, would you obey anyway? Chastity is an important virtue. Again, at least on the surface, none of these are political. But what he's trying to do is see how certain people answer them and what political beliefs they have. And ultimately, he crunch the numbers. And he basically, asked the people at the beginning, or I forget when exactly he asked, but at some point in the process, he asked them to rate their political beliefs on a 7-point scale. This is a common scale used in social science, goes from very liberal to very conservative. And then he saw how the very liberal people answered on every question, how the very conservative people answered on every question, gave them sort of a score depending on how they answered the care harm questions or the sanctity degradation questions and so forth. And notice the trend. You can look at it for a sec. This one here is the CARE Foundation. This is what very liberal people rated. This is what very conservative people rated. This is the Fairness Foundation over here. This is very liberal, moderate, conservative. Then look at loyalty, very liberal, all the way up to very conservative. Look at, what's this one? This one. Oh, sorry, I looked at authority, but here's loyalty, here's authority, here is sanctity. And I want you to notice a couple of things about these, and we'll talk about this again in class, but like, one, notice that they all have a slope. That is, for all of these things, liberals and conservatives, I'll start over. For all of these things, very liberal people either score significantly higher or significantly lower than very conservative people, right? There is a general arc for each of these. The other thing to notice is look at very liberal people versus very conservative people. Very conservative people don't have huge differences between how they answer these questions. They, in varying ways, score decently high, right, on all of the 5 moral foundations. Not true for liberals. For liberals, there are 2 foundations that really stand out very strongly, and that is care and fairness, right? On the flip side, these things with loyalty to the in-group, respect for authority, and especially sanctity don't register as much with them. And that's a really interesting finding, because what Haidt is ultimately arguing is that this makes liberal politics different than conservative politics. Conservative politics pulls on all 5 of these moral foundations that are significant, he argues, for lots of people, while liberal politics is really pulling especially on just 2 of them. And he's writing actually in the early 2010s as a Democrat, trying to get Democrats to win elections, and he's saying this is a problem. But besides his sort of political bent, I think he's just making a good observational point about politics, or at least I think he has some merit, and I'm curious what you think about it. So I won't leave any kind of finishing question here other than to say I encourage you to chew on this, and we'll ultimately discuss it when we are in live class on Monday. Thank you for listening.